What do you say we talk about 5 whiskeys that I think are as good, if not better, than what it is that the Weller lineup has to offer? Let's talk about that today on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel. Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. So today is going to be a video for those of you who are fixated on what it is that the Weller lineup has to offer. One thing I've always been a little leery of is, why is it that people are so enamored by what it is that the Weller lineup has to offer? Is it the allocation? Is it the overall flavor profile? For me, excluding the allocation part of it, I think I've got 5 whiskeys that you will appreciate that some of the whiskeys within the Weller lineup kind of have to offer. So why don't we dive into that now? First up, and again, these are going to be in no particular order. This for me is 5 whiskeys, bourbons that I think are better than what it is Weller has to offer. So without further ado, let's dive into this. And again, no particular order. First out of the gate is tried and true Maker's Mark Cask Strength. This stuff is available just about everywhere at less than $40, which again, you're in that range of the Special Reserve and the Antique 107. And again, the factoring in the lack of availability of Weller, I think you've got a great whiskey. You've also got the Maker's 46, which again is available just about everywhere. But for what it is that these 2 whiskeys have to offer, I would prefer myself to sip on either one of these over a Special Reserve, maybe even an Antique 107. So for me, again, when you factor in the allocation factor and the inability for a lot of people to get these, go check out the Maker's Cask Strength or the Maker's 46. Next up, good old Wilderness Trail, another brand for me that's still a little bit underrated, doesn't get probably some of the recognition that it should, but what it is that Wilderness Trail is doing, and Dr. Pat Heist over there, they are producing some incredible whiskeys, including their wheated bourbons. Incredible. Again, these are going to be maybe slightly higher in terms of overall price, but for me, in what this has to offer in terms of overall flavor profile versus a Special Reserve and more than likely even the Antique 107, again, I would take the Wilderness Trail wheated bourbons over those. Again, when you're factoring in the allocation and the inability to get the Weller overall, this again is another fantastic alternative. If you're able to find this in your area or at the distillery, do not look past it. Pick a bottle of the Wilderness Trail wheated bourbon up. I think you'll be really impressed with what it is. So next up, what do we have? So here is one that I think gets way overlooked. Oftentimes you see a lot of what it is, the Rebel, Ezra Brooks, obviously in combination, both sitting maybe next to each other on the shelves. But if you're able to find a Rebel in the at least 100 proof or the cask strength, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what it is that this bourbon has to offer. Again, fantastic wheated bourbon, readily available for the most part in most areas. Again, I think it's a brand and a bourbon that gets a little bit overlooked in terms of what it has to offer overall. And I think, again, in light of the inability for a lot of people to get Weller, I think this is a really nice alternative. It's for the most part, relatively inexpensive. I think it's going to be, probably in that $35 to $45 range when you can find them. But again, I think it's a nice alternative to not being able to find the Weller. Being disappointed you can't find it if you're a wheated bourbon fan, don't look any further than the Rebel Cask Strength, or there's the Rebel, I believe 100 for the most part. So give those a look. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with this as well. Next up is the Old Elk. This is again another brand that I think doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Now, this is not a bourbon. This is going to be what's considered a straight wheat whiskey. This is gonna have a combination or a mash bill of like 95% wheat, 5% malted barley. So if you're a fan of a wheated bourbon or a wheated whiskey, this is gonna offer a slightly different profile, one that's really heavy on the wheat, something again that I think is a really fantastic alternative to the Weller Special Reserve, the Weller Antique 107. Again, when you're factoring in the inability to find a lot of these Weller products, you know, don't look much further than what it is Old Elk has. Now they know they've got their standard bourbons, things along those lines, but this specifically is their straight wheat whiskey. And again, like I had mentioned before, it offers a little bit different profile, one that I think a lot of people will recognize as being a little bit different. Doesn't quite drink like a wheated bourbon. It's got a slightly different, more earthy, heavier wheat kind of influence. So if you're unfamiliar with that, you know, give Old Elk a try. I think, again, it's another brand that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And I think a lot of people who have kind of overlooked what it is Old Elk is doing will really, really enjoy what it is that this wheat whiskey has to offer. So what's next, and last but definitely not least? The old tried and true Larceny. For me, I enjoy the flavor profile of this. Now, in all honesty and in transparency, I prefer this over the Special Reserve. For me, do I prefer this over the Antique 107? Maybe not, but it's really, really close. I think for the flavor profile on the standard Larceny, and obviously if you can find the Larceny barrel proof, even better, which is probably going to be more of a comp to the 107. But again, for me, I like or appreciate the heavier flavor profile of Larceny than I do definitely the Special Reserve. For me, the Special Reserve is a nice sipping bourbon, but drinks a little bit kind of soft and muted. This, I think, just has a little bit more. I think there's more of the honey, more of the oak influence. So for me, I would prefer the standard Larceny definitely over the Weller Special Reserve. Would I take it, again, like I had mentioned before, over the Antique 107? Would be close, like the proof a little bit more on the Weller 107. So again, very, very close, similar, kind of comparable, but there are 5, maybe even 6 whiskeys, bourbons that I think are worthy of seeking out if you can't find anything from the Weller lineup. So leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on what it was that I was suggesting in comparison to a lot of what it is that Weller has to offer. I don't hear an awful lot about what it is that Weller has to offer from an overall flavor standpoint. More of what I see as the demand for Weller is the inability for a lot of people to find it in their areas. So the FOMO portion kicks in, and I think a lot of people overlook those bourbons that I had mentioned today as an alternative. And I think what the bourbons are that I had kind of discussed today, I think they're fantastic alternatives. So if you can find those, and again, leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on, are some of those what I had mentioned today something you would choose over the Special Reserve, maybe the Antique 107, maybe the Weller 12 at times. But again, those for me are 5 wheated bourbons or whiskeys that I think are a great alternative to not being able to find Weller in your area. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into another one of my videos. Greatly appreciate it. Again, leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the video. And maybe if you have a different suggestion, other people watching the video would love to hear your thoughts as well. Remember, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers.